action. Impatience for victory will guarantee defeat. Welcome back, Star Wars fans, to another Fuse Film podcast where the fans speak. I'm Kevin Coll, your host, and of course, we are becoming your ultimate destination for all the in-depth discussions in a galaxy far, far away. And joining me, as always, my good man, Mr. Vactor from the Vactorverse, and of course, Mr. Keys himself, Robbie Boy. Welcome to the show, fellas. We got some dreams and madness to talk about. Yes, that's right. Dreams and madness as we kick off the finale coming next week. Ahsoka's finally arrived in Paradia. Classic setup episode, right? Preparing us for what's, I'm sure, and hopefully praying for an explosive finale. But this one, with all of the fast-paced action and some entertaining rides, a lot to be desired in this one. It was a lot of just getting people together, right? No questions being answered whatsoever. And we'll get on to that as the guys get to go around the horn and talk about all of these things. But what didn't disappoint was my man, Baylan Skoll. Pinnacle of the episode, the pinnacle of the series, which just makes it even more sad that Ray Stevenson has left us. It just sucks because there is so much I want to see with this character pre-Ahsoka, post-Ahsoka. Obviously, we don't know what his fate's going to be here at the end of the episode. But episode 7, we're coming up on the end. So I'm going to recap a couple things real quick, and then we'll dive into it. So last week, we left off with Grand Admiral Thrawn anticipating Ahsoka's arrival. And it didn't disappoint. I mean, she came in. We had some fights. We had laughs. We had some callbacks. We had exchanges, interesting exchanges. But the primary focus of this episode was definitely reuniting the gang, right, for the final showdown. It was written by Filoni, directed by Geeta Vasant Patel. Classic TV setup episode. But, lots of questions that we still have to figure out. What is Baylan Skoll's scheme? We're going to have to wait for that. Sabine still hasn't come clean to Ezra about her journey to the galaxy, and is there a way home? The mysteries are piling up, fellas. What are the Great Mothers doing serving Thrawn? I got to know. What's in the boxes? All right, in the cargo hold. What's in the box? And how the heck are they going to get back? But as Obi-Wan says to Luke, patience, patience. And so, as Baylan says, impatience for victory will guarantee defeat. So, fellas, break it down for me. What'd you like? What'd you dislike? Let's talk about it. Vactor, Keys, jump in.
Okay, so last week you guys talked about episode 6, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I missed that one. Look, I think episode 6 was the best one for me because that was like what was alluded to in the first 2 episodes. We're seeing something new in Star Wars. We're in the new galaxy now. Check out these new people. Here's Thrawn. His introduction was great. Seeing the new stormtroopers, or I guess they're called night troopers, I suppose, right? And then with their cool getup and the gold mask, Captain Enoch, who's played by my boy Wes Chatham. Shout out to The Expanse fans out there. Go look that up if you haven't seen it. You want to see some good space TV, that's a show. He's amazing in it. But I think my biggest issue, and I have many, while I enjoy watching Ezra, I think that's great casting, and I like the hopeful idea. I'm in love with the ideas. The idea of Thrawn, the idea of the other galaxy, the idea of this larger looming threat. And the idea of our Star Wars Rebels characters coming together. By the way, this is my Rebels jacket.
Nice.
My crew jacket, which I bought from Lucasfilm when I went to go do the junket for Rogue One. Nice. And now I have a reason to wear it again. We're watching season 5 of Rebels right now, right? Nice. So, although I do like your Ahsoka shirt.
I just don't even want to talk. I'm not even
but
Kent, Stark, Parker, Wayne.
Wow, wrong universe.
I know.
That's cool. That's cool. Another franchise that needs some assistance. But look, I have to keep in mind here two things. One, what you said, Kevin, is so true. This is a show that Filoni is built entirely upon mysteries and member berries. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
remember all these animated characters coming to life? Isn't that cool? There's a big cameo in this episode. Remember him? And
Can you define memberberry for the audience out there that does not know what that means? I'm not saying I'm one of them, but
okay, yeah, sure you are. A member berry comes from the show South Park, where it refers to like modern media, especially in Hollywood, where all of these re-releases, reboots, soft reboots, all these franchises and movies and products from 20, 30, 40 years all coming back. And it's not coming back because it's the best thing that's worth your time. It's coming back because it's based on nostalgia. Remember Chewbacca? Look, here he is. It's like, you know, in this case, remember C-3PO? Oh, yeah, that's a cool guy. Now, is that relevant to the sequence? Should that entire political sequence started off this episode? No. That was terrible television. You took Hera, one of the fan favorite Star Wars characters of all time,
which
put her in a room.
In her most beautiful form in all the season in this episode. I thought she looked very elegant. I don't know, it was something about the outfit change. My love, I liked her. What am I going to say? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's the eyes, right, Kevin? Didn't you say something about that?
We were texting. I said it was the eyes. It's all in the eyes.
I do like their more formal flight suits with the lighter color tan. I'm a big fan of. Nice. I'm a big Star Wars jackets guy, so I have much respect. Our boy, I forget his name now. Who's the captain, the X-wing pilot who's there?
Man, I can see his face now. I forget his name.
He's a local boy to me. He goes to all the Toronto Blue Jays games. He follows me on Twitter. I'm forgetting his character's name. I'm just losing it.
One thing I will say that where you're building on about the part of the episode where we go back to Coruscant, Hera's facing court martial because of defying the orders to aid Sabine and Ahsoka. All of the political stuff in this entire series I've not been a real big fan of, and I think in one of our previous podcast episodes I was really hitting home that like Leia's got to show up. Like they've got to do something with Leia. She's such a force in that political scene during that time. And I will compliment the creativeness that they took to try to bring her in without just doing deep fake technology or whatever it is to have Carrie Fisher's face on somebody else like they did kind of at the end of Rogue One. But at the same time, I kind of would have loved that, you know? So I don't know, but I give him a little bit of credit for trying. But yes, the 3PO thing was a little cheesy and goofy and all that. But anyway, continue.
It would have been so wasted here because the set they're in, the characters that these senators are talking to outside of Mon Mothma are some of the worst characters in Star Wars history. Like Dave Filoni is such an amateur when it comes to directing drama. Yes, this is not his thing. He can get away with animation because he's not drawing the animated cells and emoting their faces. He can write ideas and it can be executed by artists. In this, he's controlling the camera and the actors and the staging and the lighting. He's in control now, and he's not equipped. He does not have the skill set of a Gilroy. You know what I mean? So if this guy's going to get a Star Wars movie, he shouldn't be the main guy directing. He can direct the ideas, but he needs like the top tier.
He kind of needs to do it.
AD and DP. What's that?
He needs to do what George Lucas did. Focus on the mythology. Focus on the big picture. Be a producer, and hire somebody that knows filmmaking. Right? Like
yes,
get somebody like that. What's our man Dan Trachtenberg? Hire that dude. Like. Can you imagine?
Yeah, he has more natural skill, and his whole career has been dedicated to live action for sure. But I would go even better than that. Like go bigger. Like if you want to, when it comes to a Star Wars movie, we shouldn't be having C tier live action moments ever. Like you want the best of the best. And if you watch a scene, you're like, is this the best? No, make it better. That's the Kevin Feige way, or he used to be when he was in control. But it's like, you make it better. That's his mantra. How do we better it? How do we better it? So watching those scenes, that dialogue, does it make sense that the senator looks like he's doing a high school play? No, this is terrible. And why is there's no dynamicism to the cameras and lighting? Why does it look so? Why is Harris standing there like a statue on a stage in high school? It's such a waste. It's terrible. It's even worse than the holograms from the first episodes.
I went back and watched the first 4 episodes of Andor. Like last week. I didn't have anything else to do, so I was like, I'll watch Andor. And you're 100% right. Like the scene in the beginning where he's walking out of the nightclub and it's raining and the guys are kind of following him out and stuff, and just first off, the ominous angles, the the darkness, everything that they did framing that, like it felt Star Wars because you knew you weren't in a place you were supposed to, but it felt dingy and it felt scary and it felt weird. And it's like you don't get any of that in I haven't seen it in The Mandalorian, especially, and I haven't not seen it in Ahsoka.
No,
There's just something
not at
about
all. And there's a second part of it.
Yeah.
There, everything you're saying is true, and these are a lot of this is technical part of it, and filmmaking, this and that. But Dave Filoni, so far, and you see this a lot in The Mandalorian with Favreau, and there's other reasons there where you don't have an actor on stage; it's all masks and stunt doubles. But he is failing to capture emotion and drama in character in actors' faces. He's not directing performances. Luckily, sometimes he has such great actors who can run with it, like the Ezra and Rosario as Ahsoka. Like they can choose scenery, and of course Ray Stevenson, who's one of the top tier talents of all time, especially on TV. Go watch Rome. Go watch a season of Dexter. Go watch him just steal that Black Sails when he comes in as Blackbeard later in the show. Like just insane performances, best in the world. To your point earlier. So rest in peace, that legend. But like Mon Mothma, watch her in any sequence with any other actor, even a character you never heard of, is so relevant in any scene in Andor. And it's like a whole different league than anything we're seeing in Ahsoka. So it just feels like such a step down. This political drama, is it supposed to matter? It's so absurd. You don't even write a reason for why no one would trust Hera. Have we not seen Hera succeed in every possible thing in her entire journey in Star Wars? And now we have these nobodies in this terribly shot sequence saying, oh, yeah, you're going to be court-martialed for doing that thing and trying to save the galaxy. We don't believe you. Why? Someone explain.
And why is there like 7 people in the New Republic there in that room? You know what I mean? Like prior to the Galactic Empire, it's got to be the budget, because prior to the Galactic Empire, right? You go watch the prequels. It's like a massive, group of different planets and all this. It just, none of it made any sense to me.
I think this is one
off.
Department. You know what I mean? Like
they would have been better off just not having any of the political stuff in this one.
Correct.
Like I think if they had focused on the mysteries, the intrigue, the galaxy beyond the galaxy, the big stuff that Filoni's really good at, I think we'd be in a better spot. That being said, I would give the series this point, 7 episodes in with 1 more to go. If I had to rate it right now as a whole, much better than Mandalorian season 3, light years better than Boba Fett. I would put this in, I'd give it a solid B+, right? It learned a little bit of Andor and did some of those things, maybe not well due to the limitations of the director creator, but great casts, great world building. We talked about this in the last episode. I do think that episodes 4, 5, and 6 have had some of the best world building we've seen in Star Wars. Certainly better than the sequel trilogy gave us, and just some really iconic lines and some performances. Again, I quoted one here at the top of the show. That's that moment in this episode where Baylan's looking at Shin, and he's basically saying, "You have a different path than me," and I'm okay with it. Which is not a Jedi thing to do, because we know Obi-Wan kept keeping Anakin on the path, and Yoda keeping Luke on the path. So it just shows you more and more that Baylan Skoll is a very different type of Force user and a very different type of, quote, Jedi. And
which is what we want.
Right.
That's what Rob was alluding to earlier. We want to see something different. We don't want to see the same Skywalker thing over and over again, and the same family in this universe, this vast universe. We're staying on one bloodline, on one family. So I like going away from the Jedi, going away from the Sith, seeing what else is out there. What is this new thing we're going to see? Oh, by the way, it was Captain Carson Teva that Rob was also talking about with his nice flight jacket.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested also, Kevin, to see where this goes and where it ends up, because every week it's like the amount of time we have left for them to tell this story is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I've been enjoying it for the most part. And I think it's because I just love spending time in a Star Wars universe. I just love spending time in it. But if I'm looking at it as a television show and from a technical aspect, Andor blows it out of the water. And it's just it's hard when you, like Kevin said, he rewatched it earlier today or earlier this week, and it's like when you're comparing them back to back, it's like this does not even compare. There's nothing, tying these two things together at all, really. And I, with the ineptness of the politicians, I think the only thing I can, in my mind, what ties it together for me is that this is why the New Republic fails in the sequel trilogy, which I like them improving the sequel trilogy, like making it better. Things like, okay, how did Palpatine return? Okay, well, if we're looking at Grogu and we're looking at cloning and things like that, if Filoni is able to improve what came before in the sequel trilogy, just like I think the Clone Wars animated show improved the prequels, then I'll look at it, I'll look back on it, and say, oh, okay, that was worth it. But I think right now, when we're in the middle of it and we're judging these shows just on the show itself, not anything else, I think our expectations are higher than these shows are outputting. Like the product that we're getting on screen is not matching our expectations, and I think we're going with it because we love Star Wars. We love seeing Anakin and the world between worlds and all these things. The world building, like Kevin was saying, I think that is what we are here for. We're not here for this being a great show. I think all of us are just tied to Star Wars in particular. And for me, my favorite part of this whole episode was the little Anakin training video that he had that she was playing, which we've also seen on Rebels before, because she showed Ezra at one point one of the training holograms.
Yep.
And he was kind of, oh yeah, that's.
Do
I
you
wish I could
think
have
she?
seen him in his
Do you
prime.
think she gave those to Luke? Like, wouldn't that be cool if Luke got like a copy of those like 20 recordings? And I got to say this because I said it on a podcast prior, and I'm not seeing anybody talk about this on Twitter, X, whatever the hell it's called. I'm not seeing it on Instagram. I'm not seeing it in YouTube. Nowhere is anybody talking about Luke Skywalker. Where is he? Why was he not invited to go on this little quest? Because I'm sorry, I get that, like, as fans, we want to move away from that and we want to see something new, but at the same time, we're in a piece of canonical history within the galaxy where Luke Skywalker is not a legend yet in the sense of he's been reduced, or excuse me, he's a legend. He's not a myth, right? So he is a very important person right now. We saw him in that Mandalorian season 2 finale. It was a huge deal. Him showing up in that X-Wing and getting Grogu and kicking ass and taking names. It was like the Luke Skywalker we've been waiting to see as kids since the Return of the Jedi ended, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't see any of that in the sequel trilogy. We saw this old, angry, depressed hermit who just had nothing, didn't want anything to do with anybody. Like, what are we doing? So I just that's the one thing that's been like nagging at me during this is there's still a possibility he could show up in the movie that this is all building towards, and I know we talked about that, but I just do find it odd. I just find the whole thing odd. It really is weird. That's all I gotta say. It's weird to me.
You're right. It's this, everything both of you are saying is true. It's such a weird place in the timeline because they're essentially retconning. They are stuck a little bit by the horrendously. The more I look back at it, the more I dislike it. Like episodes 7 to 9, the Disney saga trilogy, because there's no reference in that to Thrawn and other galaxies and magic with an extra letter at the end, and you know what I mean. It doesn't. None of that makes any sense. So there goes your question of stakes. We know none of this matters. It has nothing to do with Palpatine. Somehow he returned. That has nothing to do with that at all. And I didn't finish my very first point is this show is not built on storytelling. It's based on we love Star Wars, we love Rebels. Oh my God, Anakin's back. Did that make any sense in the World Between Worlds? No. No one I know outside of us. Nobody. I love watching Hayden as Anakin. I watched it for that. Now, on paper, does that storyline make sense? And them going there and her falling off a cliff into water and magic water, and then Hera hearing that, or Ahsoka, it doesn't. None of that makes any sense at all. and they just throw it away. It's just there because member berries. But here's the thing: all along, we're watching this for that, right? Nostalgia, and oh my god, look at that! That thing is cool. But is it? I don't know in story, but it's all questions. You talked about Baylan. We are one episode away from the end, and we have no idea what he's doing. Why?
Right.
Why is this show about like Lost style twists at the end?
No.
Or what is Thrawn actually trying to do? What is this cargo he's putting in ships? Oh, we're not going to tell you. Why are the Great Mothers or Night Sisters, whatever you want to call them, why are they so eager to get off this planet and leave this galaxy? And what happened to their planet? Oh, we're not going to tell you that. Why is the New Republic so dumb? We're not going to tell you that either. You know what I mean? And I will say this, though. Back at Star Wars Celebration, we did talk to Lars Mikkelsen, who plays Thrawn, and he kind of said straight up, he's like, you're not going to know what Thrawn's doing to the very end of the season. And I'm like, that's weird, because it's like, we've been waiting so long for this, and Mandalorian fell off the boat, and the viewership is not exactly breaking numbers on this because it's so niche. And now we're niche within niche because we're not even explaining ourselves in this niche thing. And to what you're saying, Luke, yeah, I'm assuming in the movie he has to be there, but also where's Zeb? Like, there's just here's a character we're going to tease the Mandalorian.
They name in this previous episode. Oh, he's training, pilots or whatever. And,
okay,
yeah, okay, great. It seems odd. Yeah.
With Luke, however, we do know, because of the timeline of this episode, we do know it's after. It confirms fully that it's after Mandalorian season 3. So we presumably Luke is just built his academy, finished constructing it, which he has, and is starting to get his first Jedi. Maybe he's training Ben now. I don't know. Again, they don't tell you.
I have the Aftermath books, and I'm trying to think in my head where those fit in this timeline as well.
Yes.
Was that pre Mandalorian season 1? Where the Aftermath kind of, or is this maybe happening adjacent? I don't know. Any of you fans out there that are listening to the show, just email us, tweet us, whatever you need to do. We got to find this out. Bacter's Googling it right now as we're talking. I will say this: you mentioned something about the last episode or one of the previous episodes, Rob, where putting Ahsoka in the water, bringing Anakin Skywalker back. We didn't have you on the episode where we talked about this, but I actually felt like that was some really good character development, and it explained a lot of why Rosario Dawson's decisions around the character was stoic, slightly dry. She's been dealing with the weight of and the blame of the Jedi Order falling, and she could have done something about it, the loss of her master, all of those things she was still dealing with. So I do feel like the episode did a lot to get her to let go of all that. And again, that's fan service for the fans. People like my wife, who had no connection to Clone Wars or any of the stuff that happened prior to this, was kind of like, what are we doing? Why is Anakin Skywalker here? What's happening? Is that even really Anakin Skywalker? What's happening? Explain this to me. And it's like, I don't have time to explain it to you.
Well, also, I don't think, honestly, Kevin, I don't think you can. I know this. I'm on the opposite side of that, where I have seen every episode of Rebels, and I know from watching Ahsoka's entire arc, including the bonus season of Clone Wars, which shows more of her stories after she left the Jedi. Are we forgetting? She left the Jedi many years ago, and while she left the Jedi after that, what did she do? She helped start the rebellion in Rebels. Where if you watch Rebels and watch the tale, all that stuff, she is stoic. She's not the kid anymore. She's an adult. And if you watch Rebels, she shows up in what? White robes, right? So she is exactly where she was in Rebels season 3.
It's fair.
To me, that did absolutely nothing. And what was the big thing at the end of that? Choose to live? She already made that choice. She's been living the whole time. Is she not Fulcrum? Isn't that what she's called? Like, didn't she start the rebellion? Like, what has changed? She was more of that 5-6 years ago on TV than she was here. They just forgot, or retelling people who only watched live action. To me, as someone who watched every single thing, I did not understand it. I only know that was their biggest trailer ever for the show, was to have Hayden show up. To me, it's a marketing ploy. It's a member berry. It's have Hayden back, which is great. Hayden deserves a chance. But man, let's tell some stories that make sense. If you want Hayden back, let's just tell a story with Anakin back. My fear is they're going to do something absurd and actually bring him back as they're going to split him into two Force beings. Vader's going to go away, and good Hayden's going to come back, and good luck explaining that to Luke Skywalker. So it's like
that would be weird.
Yeah,
Rob, thank you for always keeping us grounded. us honest.
Sorry, Kevin. I know you loved it. I love Hayden back too, but goddamn, that between two world stuff, they breached time travel, and now we have this inexplicable whatever character arc.
It's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask. It really is. And again, I think, you know, as we try to compare it to Andor and stuff like that, which maybe isn't fair. I don't know, but it's one of those things where storytelling, character-driven stuff that means something, and really good acting can make all the difference. And even what's the actress that plays Mothma? I forgot her name. Is it Genevieve
O'Reilly?
Yeah. She even didn't feel 100% on her game in the political scenes that she's been in this series than what we saw in Andor. I mean, the stuff we saw in Andor, like the scene where she's in the car and she's just riding home, and she's got this like spy network going on, all this crap that she's doing that literally could get her killed in 5 seconds. Like, you see that in her eyes, right? And I just don't see any of that in like her interactions with Hera. You know, I don't see any of that in her trying to be this leader for this new republic that's like, you know, slipping at the seams, right? So it is interesting. But one of the things I'll compliment about this particular episode, because we are talking about episode 7, and I'm going to pick on my wife. Again, she's a great example of somebody who really has zero attachment to any of this. She just watches it because I'm watching it. But she enjoys it. She thinks it's quality entertainment, right? To say the least. And she really likes Thrawn. She was like, that dude is interesting. He's freaky in not like a weird way, but just like freaky, like smart. And she like picked up on that without me having to like tease her about his like military strategy prowess and, you know, all that kind of stuff, how he was hired by Palpatine or found by Palpatine and joined the, you know, all that kind of stuff, his backstory. And she's like, the whole episode 7, she's like, this guy, I feel like, is 4 steps ahead of everybody. So I felt like they did a really good job of painting that with Thrawn. And again, that's the brilliance of Lars Mikkelsen's voice and his charisma and his, you know, acting. I said this in the last episode. Did Thrawn gain some weight while he was out in Paradia? Like what's he eating while he's out there? What's going on?
Poor Lars.
I'm just kidding. I had to throw that out there. But yeah, he does look a little older and a little bit more portly, as they say.
They haven't been too active out there the last couple of years.
Well, that's probably true. They're just, you know, hanging out with the knights, the witch mothers or whatever they are,
on this barren wasteland. Yeah,
it's gotta be some interesting parties they're having on Friday nights. But yeah, I do like the strategy stuff that they showed with Thrawn, how he was willing to take some losses to get some gains and things like that. Very, very interesting. Baylan is the wild card, though. He's the wild card and he's been the wild card the whole time. And I gotta know. Do you guys have any theories? I mean, the resounding theory seems to be the world between worlds, and that he wants to restore some kind of Jedi Order, or his version of the Jedi Order, or some new thing potentially. I've also seen theories online of he's the forefather of the Knights of Ren. I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think Baylan Skoll's got planned?
Well, in the show, we know he wants to break the cycle, and that's true. Yeah. You play Knights of the Old Republic, or you watch the Disney saga versus what George Lucas did, and it's like the Jedi and the Sith. It keeps going, and it's in the cycle of some kind of empire and some kind of republic and war, and it happens over and over again, and someone's too powerful. So we know that much is true. So he's trying to break the cycle, and he wants power to do that. Nothing we've seen from the world between two worlds explains any sort of extra power other than connection or time travel. So maybe that's part of it. But there is a detail, though, if you look closely at his the episode where he breaks the star map with his lightsaber, and they show his wrist with the little screen on it. Mm-hmm. If you it's in Aurebesh, and if you translate it, do you want to know what it says? I'm sure Vactor knows. It's got the Skywalker family and lineage on it. So, including like Ben. So I think the theory there is that he's trying to end the Skywalker saga, which is such a cool meta layer. He's trying to end these episodic movies that Disney already ruined. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting.
And that they're bringing back, like with episode 10. So
Rey.
with Rey,
This Rey movie.
Rey Skywalker.
Yeah.
So.
Oh boy, I don't know what. That's Ray Palpatine. That's Ray Palps. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, other than some goofy thing, he's gonna go time travel and try to kill Anakin, stop this whole thing from happening. But I don't know.
I mean, that's kind of exciting that we don't. It's not obvious that we know exactly what he is or what he's going after. They have, the symbolism and the Norse mythology of Baylan and Shin being these two wolves that chase the sun and the moon. I was seeing some theories online that, okay, Ahsoka is the sun and Sabine is the moon, and like they had all these things. And I was like, I don't know what is going on here. But seeing Baylan almost say, okay, your path lies over there, talking to Shin, my path is over here, and I'm going to go. I saw that parallel of Obi-Wan and Luke, like, your path is on a different destiny, and mine's over here. So I'm very interested just to see what explanation they give us. And in this last episode, is it going to be satisfying to the point where I look back on Ahsoka and say, yes, these 8 episodes, it was worth the journey for me to go from the beginning to the end. These characters had some type of an arc, and they had some type of evolution that is interesting. And see, the big problem with this, with all of us knowing that Filoni's movie is coming, is that I feel like there's no stakes in this show, because I feel like everything is going to happen in that Filoni movie. We've already talked about Luke coming back, and I feel like they're trying to do the end game of Star Wars assemble, and then they all come out of the portals. That would be the Filoni movie I'm thinking of, which they tried to do in Rise of Skywalker, and it failed miserably. But I'm just interested to see what is this last episode.
The random Wedge Antilles scene.
Yeah.
It's like, remember me?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
so,
remember him.
so bad. Weirdly
I wanna
enough,
see
it's
what's
you,
next.
I didn't realize this until many years ago, but like, yeah, that's Ewan McGregor's uncle or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's
So it's
awesome.
such a, he's family.
I remember the
affair
episode
there.
1, like interviews behind the scenes stuff where he was
Yeah.
saying that. I'm like, man, your uncle's like the greatest rebel pilot ever. Awesome.
Yeah. What did you guys think about Ezra in this episode? Was it worth bringing him back for this show?
He's one of the more fun things to watch. It is. I know people are complaining about why didn't he take the lightsaber? Like Sabine didn't even use it. I'm like, it's true. It would have been cool to see that. It's cool, the idea that he's just embraced the Force in all these years. That's all he had. But him being a techie guy, I'm surprised he didn't build one. That was kind of a shame for me, because are you one with the Force if you've given up that? I don't know. Whatever. My problem is, like, again, Filoni, like, he's doing these action things where he's like fighting the stormtroopers, but it's like, it's very B tier. Like, why isn't that the coolest action scene I've ever seen? Like get the best stunt people in there and do crazy stuff.
I will say this,
Force.
I like Filoni's choices with Ezra, right? When we saw Ezra's arc in Rebels, right? He went from this thief, this kid, this, street rat, snarky, guy, and, to exercising some wisdom, some patience, right? He's been taught by Kanan. He's becoming this mature character, and was smart enough and wise enough to use the Purgle to send him and Thrawn to Paradia. And I actually kind of like that he sort of embraced his like nomadic sort of turtle trailer park lifestyle that he was living there. That it's, I don't need technology anymore. I don't need any of these techie things. I'm one with the Force, and the Force is with me, and I'm just kind of chill, hanging out. He's kind of broed out a little bit in the sense of he's just real chill, And so I thought that was really compelling, and then to tie that up with, here's the lightsaber. No, I don't need it. And then I'm like, okay, well, what is he going to do? He doesn't have a lightsaber. Like, what do you mean you don't need a lightsaber, bro? Like, and he then, like, literally Shin comes at him, and it's just stop, right? And I mean, we were all texting about this beforehand, so we'll talk to the audience about it. It took me a while to remember if we'd seen this before. Obviously, Darth Vader has done various versions of this, force pulling the ship in the Obi-Wan series, stopping the lightsaber from Rey. We saw Kylo
Reva,
Ren,
yeah.
Reva. Sorry, we saw Kylo Ren stopping the blaster. So we've seen versions of this in the new Star Wars packages that we've gotten over the years. So I thought that was interesting that Ezra is sort of going that direction with the Force.
It shows confidence in him, which is weird because if he's saying he's embracing his nomadic, peaceful lifestyle and away from tech, but it is still weird to me that someone with a lightsaber attacking your friends is coming up to you and he's like, no. Meanwhile, and by the way, 35 seconds of screen time later, he takes out like 6 stormtroopers with a blaster. So like he's not afraid in combat to do the thing.
A little bit different than the other nomad, Luke Skywalker, in the sequel trilogy, right? Like do you think that was a little bit of a slap in the face to Rian Johnson to say, "Hey, our nomad's a little bit better than yours, so suck it"?
Well, I don't know. All the memes out there have Sabine handing in the lightsaber, and it has his face and Luke throwing the lightsaber away. It's like, no, I don't want this. This like legacy lightsaber. It's like, no. But I'm sure he'll get the lightsaber at some point. Obviously, that's gonna be.
There's going to be a payoff.
And Sabine will get the dark saber again or something.
All 3 of them are going to have lightsabers in the finale. I think that's what's going to happen.
It's going to be Luke, Ahsoka, everybody with lightsabers. It's like, oh my god, Hasbro toys. You know what I mean?
And they're going to get the color, and they're going to get the color wrong. They're just going to get it wrong.
Oh man, don't even start. Yeah, but sorry, back to your main point. I love seeing Ezra on screen. That's great casting. He's such an enjoyable character. He's able to like capture like he's been there a while. He's adult. He's more peaceful. He's very patient, which is weird with Sabine, who's not answering any questions. But like his comedic moments are perfect. It does feel like Ezra, and they did that right. So this is what Filoni's good at. You get a good actor, a good character, and you carry that Rebel storyline forward. So I love what Filoni's doing with story ideas and Star Wars theory, but I just wish the execution was up there as well.
Yeah. What's crazy is that how closely does that parallel Lucas? Like the thing that we loved about Lucas originally was the world building, the storytelling, and just the ideas that he created and came up with. And then, when he passed it off to other directors or when he got help, that was when the full power of Star Wars came through. I feel like Filoni's the same way, and he trained under Lucas. So it's like he has the world building, he has the story part of it, but the action, the directing actors, obviously he hadn't done live action before, but cutting his teeth on The Mandalorian didn't, put him to the point where it's like, this is amazing. Filoni's directing is top notch. So it's very interesting, those parallels between Lucas and Filoni. And another thing that I thought has come up time and time again for me, and every new series that we get, new Jedis, is like, how many people survived Order 66? I feel like it's the same thing in DC when Superman was the last survivor of Krypton, and then wait a minute, there's Supergirl, and then there's the Super Horse, and then there's the dog Crypto, and it was like, where are all these Kryptonians? Zod and the villains. It was like all these Kryptonians survived the destruction as the years went on and people just added to the story. I feel like that's the same thing with the Jedi, and it's like at first it was like a tiny guy, and Luke was the only Jedi, and then now there's like millions of Jedis.
They didn't have a plan from the beginning, and so it's the Lost, and really Lost was taking after Star Wars. There's a very famous, I don't know if this was true or if this was actually a real letter, but when the Lost season finale was coming out, I remember that there was a supposed letter that George Lucas wrote to J.J. Abrams that said something along the lines of just fake it, nobody will ever know. So I don't think it was legit, but it was really funny. It's one of those things where it's the classic, and Rob, we've talked about it on previous episodes here in the Fuse Film Podcast, but we were like, Star Wars, unfortunately, like Marvel and like DC, is in a place where if if it creates a question, all you have to do is create a show now or a comic book or something to answer that question. And so it's like, and then you have to create more things to make the characters that you have, the stable that you have, more interesting. If Luke Skywalker was literally the only Jedi walking around, at some point that gets stale. Okay, well, let's give him Ahsoka, right? That would be interesting. Hey, she was trained by his dad. So she's still kind of hanging around. What are those conversations like? So we saw a little bit of that in the Mandalorian season 2, or whatever the Boba Fett, Mandalorian. I call it Mandalorian season 2.5, but anyway,
that's what it is.
Yeah.
But that's why that stuff happens. It's annoying, but that's just the reality of it. And I'm sure we'll find out that there's another 200 survivors of the Order 66. Some guy was taking a vacation day, whatever. So.
I mean, if you played the Jedi games, like Cal Kestis survived. I mean, everyone. Like, I don't think.
Yeah.
The only people who died are all the kids Anakin killed in that room.
Which is terrible. Well, not one of them, because apparently Raven survived. So.
Raven survived. Yeah.
Grogu.
Yeah, Grogu did. Yeah. Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks saved him.
And like, I remember the Sith rule of 2. And just kidding, we have like unlimited Inquisitors. Yeah.
In a whole stadium full of Sith worshippers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Power. Wonderful storytelling. Yeah.
Oh, but it's still Star Wars. It's still Star Wars. So, Rob, I meant to mention this to you, and I mentioned this on the last episode that Vactor and I did. I had to pitch this. I'm married with 2 kids, right? So I'm like I'm behind the 8 ball on 90% of everything, and I finally got a chance to watch the docuseries on Disney Plus, the Light and Magic documentary about ILM and the creation of ILM and all this stuff. If you have not seen this, I highly recommend it. It is fantastic. It starts off, just George Lucas and John Dykstra, and just like their conversation about Star Wars and like how would we approach visual effects, to basically the first 2 episodes is just about Dykstra going and recruiting all of these random people to help him figure these things out that had never been done before. And you get guys like Joe Johnson and I forgot the guy that was like kind of one of the big camera guys, Ken Edlin, I think was his name. And just all of these, as fans, we know them as like just the godfathers of like visual effects, and it's just a fantastic series. So anybody listening to the show, Rob included, if you have not seen this, it's fantastic. It's a wonderful, wonderful documentary. I was really geeking out on it. So it gave me such an appreciation for how these movies were made, specifically the first Star Wars movie. And I think without the friendship of Steven Spielberg that George Lucas had, ILM may not have sort of caught on, even with the success of those movies, because it was really Spielberg that said, wait a minute, these are my guys. I like hanging out with these people. I want to do something with them. And Indiana Jones came out of that. And that movie in itself has its own, special effects glory, right? It mixed with the stunts. And then, obviously that goes into the next iconic milestone of cinema history, which is Jurassic Park, right? So fascinating documentary, total sidebar conversation, but I just had to bring that out there. I'm not getting paid to pitch this. I just think it's fantastic. So check it out.
That's cool. I will see that.
Yeah. Well, guys, I feel like we've crushed this episode. I feel like we've talked about everything.
There's one thing that we didn't talk about. It was the Ahsoka Sabine Force connection, and they've been slowly hinting that Sabine was Force sensitive, and I think this is like the biggest indication of, okay, there's a connection between these two. They're able to talk between each other through the Force, and how much of that is going to be played out in the next episode and in the future movie, I wonder.
Yeah. Am I misremembering? Like, when did Ahsoka take Sabine on to be an apprentice? Like, there must have been some kind of Force connection already, or Force sensitivity on her
It was
part.
off camera.
we talked about this in the premiere episode reaction episode, but like first off, I think I had to admit to myself that I didn't realize that George Lucas had said this in an interview where basically he said everybody is attuned to the Force. Everybody has the Force within them, and just really it really comes down to who's more talented, I guess, in their ability to manipulate the Force for good or evil or whatever. And so in reality, Sabine, like anybody, is Force sensitive. It's just it was not indicated that she had the level of abilities to be able to use that, as a Jedi or whatever. That seems to not be the case anymore. It seems that like those things are slowly becoming unlocked. But it sounded like it felt like in the first episode of the season that she was still very raw. Like she could use a lightsaber, because she's athletic, she's Mandalorian, she has all these fighting skills, but like there was no sense that she could, make objects float and do all those things that we know Force users to be able to do. So the telepath stuff was somewhat surprising. I have somewhat of a theory. They're in Paradia, and the idea is that the Force supposedly originated in this galaxy before it came to the galaxy that the main Star Wars canon takes place in, if I'm understanding that correctly. And so maybe that has something to do with it. She's closer to the origins of the Force, so to speak. Who knows?
They should have said something in this episode.
Maybe it's more Ahsoka's abilities, dominating that more so than Sabine. Like she's a receiver, not a primary communicator on that. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Obi-Wan in episode 4, Obi-Wan versus Luke. Like,
yeah,
he has that
use
potential.
the Force, Luke. Yeah. What?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I'm interested to see where it goes with all of these characters. Every single storyline I'm interested in. The Sabine and Ahsoka, the Ezra, the Thrawn, Baylan and Shin, the Night Mothers, Night Sisters. All these things I'm interested to see. How are they going to wrap this up all in this one episode? I don't know how long the last episode is, but I'm hoping for something good.
All right, Rob, you have the final word. How is this thing going to wrap up?
Yeah, tell us, Rob.
I think the final episode will explain, like, the thing we're all wondering is, like, the actual amount of midichlorians in each character. And then we can really understand what's going on with the Force and what the sensitivity versus skill means.
I'm a level 5.
Because I wish it was. I think they have messed with the definition and they're like what the lore means behind Force sensitivity. To me, it was always like certain beings are more attuned with the Force. They have and it didn't have to quantify it with like a blood cell count of midichlorians.
No, I
it
totally
was just
agree
like
with you. Yeah.
Luke was special because he was sensitive, and his sister had the connection. They got that from their father, and again, it doesn't have to be bloodlines either. It can start and stop anywhere depending on how the Force used. And yes, it's been clear since the first movie, the Force flows through every living being. This is what Obi-Wan says, right?
It's what binds us, surrounds us, penetrates.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean anyone can just think hard enough and practice hard enough and move things with their mind. That means every person. No, come on, guys. I don't like that. I talked to. I referenced earlier the Rogue One junket. I asked Donnie Yen about this because his character obviously is a practitioner. He believes in the religion.
I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. I'm one with
the
Force.
He is, and he is blind, yet he can deflect and see things before they happen in terms of action. He's dodging lasers and stuff like that. These are extra senses he has because he's in tune with the Force. He didn't practice that. He of course he practiced that. He's a martial artist. He practices religion, but he's also sensitive in some way. And I believe Sabine is as well. Watch how she rides that speeder bike and flies under the E-wing in the first episode. That is not normal skills. That she's enhanced. And look how she's blocking. She's seeing blasters being shot at her and blocking it with her tiny wristbands like Wonder Woman. That is not normal. Like Mandalorian training. Like she's an enhanced being. She's got the mutant power of the Force. So I think
so. It's really maybe more of just a confidence issue. It feels like then for her, like when we saw her in the beginning, she was lost. She was consumed by guilt about Ezra not being able to find him or have any leads to go get him. So maybe that was really more. Again, maybe if we're just breaking this down simplistically, Ahsoka's journey is for whatever reason, she hadn't gotten over anything, from Clone Wars or whatever. Sabine's journey, same deal. I'm not over Ezra being gone, and there's nothing I can do about it. So let's pick up these two characters. Oh, and by the way, how about we just make them, master and apprentice, which was a little bit of a curveball. I almost would have preferred that not happen, and the whole series, like this would have been more interesting to me. The whole series, Sabine is displaying these to the audience, and like Ahsoka's kind of like, you need a master. And like maybe it ends with her like taking on Sabine as an apprentice versus all of this crap that we didn't see happen off camera for like 5 years. I think that would have been more interesting, or even better. Like, and I've got a theory too, and this is probably going to be controversial as we wrap this episode up here. I think Ezra's going to die. I do, and here's why, because they've got to give the show is not called Ezra. The show is not called Sabine. It's called Ahsoka, right? She is the character of the show, the central being of the show. Now you can make an argument maybe she's the one that dies, right? But I don't think you cast Rosario Dawson for a 1-season series and not have the intention to bring her back for a feature film that we all know is coming. But somebody's dying at the end of this. And I just got to think it's Ezra. There's also something that is really bothering me about Ezra, which is like, again, and this is some of the production value of the show, but like, Paradis is this big planet, but it's like they just left the Star Destroyer with Thrawn and just like went outside, and like 5 minutes later, like there's Ezra hanging out in a little trailer park. Like Thrawn didn't know where he was. Like what are we doing? Like some of that just like is goofy and just kind of just poor writing, and we're just supposed to have some suspension of disbelief here. But like, I just like what has Thrawn and Ezra been doing for 10 years or 15 years or whatever it's been,
I think like Thrawn is playing as always the long con. Thrawn didn't want to kill Ezra, unless there's a piece of dialogue there where he said he couldn't find him or something, but I think that's very intentional. He knows that the mothers are trying to call Morgan and bring these people here, and the ultimate bargaining chip would always be Ezra. And in Rebels he was trying to kind of bring him in a little bit, right? So,
well, that's true, because he wanted access to the way of the world, the world between worlds. I almost said War of the Worlds, the world between worlds. I know that was an important part. So yeah, I'm forgetting some of these nuances. So yeah.
Look,
anyway,
because this show is so incomplete, it would be weird. First of all, I would love to see him do something bold like that and just like wipe out what we think is one of the main characters.
Yes.
Or could you imagine killing Ezra and not having Zeb meet up? But I think that would just piss off too many fans. That's not the Filoni way. Like, could you imagine all this time you end this cliffhanger on Rebels and you finally get to see him for like 3 minutes of screen time?
I think Gilroy would do it. I think Gilroy would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, well, Gilroy would have a story where there were stakes and every character mattered, and I would care what's going on, and they'd be fighting for something that mattered, and it would make sense and fit in the lore. This is none of those things. I feel bad. I'm very negative on Ahsoka today. I love these little no-two turtle people, by the way. Yeah. I love Thrawn. I love Goldface, Expanse actor. There's some cool stuff. It's just so, and I think Vactor said it, it's just my expectations are high. I want this to be the best show on TV. Why is this not as good as the Wheel of Time? Like, I'm more interested and invested in Ahsoka because of the characters and lore and Star Wars of it all. Yes. But like, it's not as good as that. And like, why am I still watching a show of all the 10, 15 shows on last month, this month, and next month? This is technically, like, the way it's made is the lowest quality one. And it, to me, with all the money and fandom and people behind it, they can do anything they want. It should be the best in every way show on TV. And it's so far from it. Well, yeah, because Dave Filoni's directing it. Why?
No. Disney.
Disney is dropping the ball 100%.
Disney.
But
Disney. I do believe it's Disney. I think Filoni has his shortcomings for sure, but and I'm a Disney guy. I'm not giving up my Disney Plus subscription. My kids love Disney. I'll go to the parks, whatever. I'm a Disney. You got my money, all right? Just take it and burn it, whatever you want to do. I don't care. But my point is, and I work in corporate America. I know what happens when executives and shareholders get involved in things that they shouldn't be getting involved in. It's never going to be 100% what the creator wants nor what the audience wants, because at the end of the day, everybody's got to have a a part of the recipe that they want to cook in the kitchen, and that's just reality. And it's frustrating when this was all George Lucas's thing. The one thing that we as fans could always rest assured on, hey, the buck stops with George. This is what George wanted. I mean, I've seen quotes and stories of people like Rick McCallum coming out and saying, hey, we had lots of disagreements about things that went down in the prequel. We didn't like this Jar Jar thing, but you know what? George made it happen. That was George, right? He wanted a digital character. He wanted to prove to the world that they could have a CGI character. And guess what? It changed filmmaking again forever, right? We don't have Avatar without this, without Jar Jar Binks. But with that, you get some goofiness and some stupid stuff. But you know what? I was a kid. I kind of liked Jar Jar when he came out. I thought he was funny, you know? So there is something there. I think George Lucas gets kids a lot better than Michael Bay does, because Michael Bay thinks kids like fart jokes, like, you know, and stuff like that. So, you know, Transformers, oh, terrible. But anyway, we got to close this out because we're coming up here on the end of the episode. So, Rob, give us the closing words. Give us a few what you think's going to happen in the finale, and we'll close out.
Yeah, I imagine the final shot or sequence will be like them being Thrawn and everybody successfully leaving this planet and returning to our galaxy that's far, far away, and revealing nothing about what happens next. And I know we talked a bit about the Dave Filoni movie that all these shows are going to be leading to, but that could be years away. It is years away. It's going to be Mandalorian season 4 first. It will be in Ahsoka season 2. I don't know what's going on with Boba Tatooine Fett, and so like, and whatever else they decide to do.
Acolyte.
But Acolyte's coming, but it's not nothing to do with this. It's what's that?
I want Oliphant's character to come back. I want a season of that. Give me a Gilroy series of Timothy Oliphant as like Justified in Star Wars. That's what I want.
But he's on Tatooine. I'm out. No. That planet's banned. That's the rule. We're done with that planet. They absolutely ruined Boba Fett and everything. Oh, don't even get me started. Yeah, so I don't know what they're going to lead to, but it's weird because of the stakes issue. Like, what is that movie really going to be about? It maybe it can't include Luke Skywalker because they wouldn't fit his journey that we know about from the books and where he ends up in, you know.
Yeah. Real quick, before we end this, I forgot to mention this in the main episode, but Rob, do you think it was worth them saying, okay, this introducing a whole new galaxy, because they didn't do anything with it in this show, but for future shows and for future things, was it worth it that they opened it up?
Yes, I'll tell you why. With somebody's name, you guys know James Mangold?
Yeah.
What's his movie?
Yeah, he's doing
Dawn of the Jedi. He's taking us back thousands of years to the beginning of the Jedi. And I believe the beginning forms of the Jedi and Sith started in this other galaxy. I'm not sure the Force started there. If the Force is all living things, that should mean all living things in every galaxy. But certainly these religions and these Night Sisters of Dathomir or the Great Mothers, they began there. And so they brought something to our galaxy, or not ours, but, you know, the main galaxy. So I imagine that's directly teeing up that. And I would love to see more weirdness. If we're in another galaxy, I was hoping to see more craziness. Like the structures and the Great Mothers feel very normal Star Wars. Like I was hoping to see some.
Right, and that was going to be my point. Was what did it introduce in this show? That felt like just a regular planet. Like they could have went to another planet and could have had Peridia. They didn't have to go to another galaxy. In this show, it didn't do anything. Now, for future ones, it might open it up. But like Rob said,
you're right. They have to pay it off in the future because even with Thrawn being out there, they could say, "Oh, we had to hide Thrawn for X amount of years. We had to put him in another galaxy." Well, it's like that's not necessarily true. You could have had him in the dark reaches of the Outer Rim, in the deep darkness of space, which we thought he was in.
Yeah, I just thought he was hanging out in the unknown regions or something. Like that's
always been the way. But again, we don't know. It's all, again, this is another question factor. Like, why? They're not telling us stories. They're leaving just mysteries open. And like, we'll watch to figure out why later. And are the payoffs going to be good? Well, I don't know. I never liked the payoff of the Knights of Ren and what they were in the movies. They never explained it. I still don't know why Maz Kanata had Luke Skywalker's lightsaber that fell off in Bespin.
You want to know why?
Well, there's a comic that explains why, but I don't want to hear you say that.
You want to know why? Because J.J. Abrams loves mystery boxes, and somehow J.J. Abrams has returned.
Oh, that's the final order.
All right, everybody. That's it for this episode of the Fuse Film Podcast because we have really talked about it all. We're prepared. We're ready for what's to come in the season finale of Ahsoka. We're holding our breaths for what we hope to be a satisfying conclusion. But we'll catch you guys on our next episode of the Fuse Film Podcast. Rob, thank you as always. Vactor, my friend, thank you as always as well. That's it. Remember, keep your blasters at the ready, and let's keep your lightsabers lit. I love you guys. Dreams and madness, people. Stay tuned. And stop.